You know the area. You have been making big moves there. You make it like 20 years. A year.
We become so strong. The higher they build their barriers, the higher they build their barriers, the taller we become. The more they keep our ranks away, the faster we will run. You know, something inside so strong. We know we can make it, though they're doing us wrong so long. They thought our pride was gone. No. Something inside so strong. Something inside so strong. The more they refuse to hear our voice, the louder we will sing. They hide behind walls of Jericho. Their lives will come tumbling. Deny my place in time. They squander wealth that's mine and yours. Something inside so strong. We know we can make it. Though they doing us wrong so long, they thought our pride was gone. Oh, no. Something inside so strong. So strong. Brother and sister, when they insist we're not good enough, but we know better, we look them in the eye and say, we're going to do it anyway. Going to do it anyway because we know there is something inside so strong. We know we can make it, though they're doing us wrong so long. They thought our pride was gone. No. Something inside so strong. Something inside so strong. Can y'all help me say it? Something inside so strong. Something inside so strong. We know. Hey, Brother Turkey, there is something that Ali Muhammad brought to us some time ago when we were kings. You know, when we were great rulers, we had queens who were great rulers. How they built the pyramids, how they built great cities, great universities, because they were once kings and rulers. For in every heart, here is the mountaintop, right here at Pitt. This is your mountaintop tonight. Well, one man, Akbar, will climb the mountain, and the rest of us will be lifted up to greater heights, to higher destinies of knowledge and learning, destinies of wealth, untold wealth that we have to develop through reparations. But we will touch the skies together. We will dance in rows of gold, and we will tell the world we will be rulers again. Can I hear you say that? We will be rulers again. Come on. We will be rulers again. We will be rulers again. Harambe!
Please introduce Mr. Keon Scott for the Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it sound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has covered us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of what new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. With the majestic rise, and with the steady and our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sought. We have come over the way that the tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary, God of our silent tears, God who has brought us from far away, God who has find our mind, let us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. We have here tonight a Pitt alumni, a member of the founding class of BS of 1968, who has also gone on to become the publisher, owner, and CEO of the Black Chronicle newspaper, Mr. Ben Wilson.
Thank you very much. It's indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here this evening. I'd like to first give my honor and praise to God who woke us up this morning and started us on our way. And I give God the glory because without Him, we would be nothing. That's right. And I also would like to thank the BAS for having me, and a special thanks to Kristen Williams, who, with her diligent effort, we put this program on together, and hopefully that we'll have a successful evening. The Black Chronicle is a compilation of 222 years of black history, dating back from 17 1778 to 1956, from slavery through the civil rights movement. And every article in this Black Chronicle is truly authentic in its nature. Just think for a moment, 222 years of Black history. When I was putting this Black Chronicle together and gathering the information, incidentally, I got the information from the late, great Henry Hampton, who, if you remember correctly, Henry Hampton was the gentleman that put together Eyes on the Prize. He was also the CEO and owner of a black publishing company, one of the largest in the United States, called Black Sign. And it's quite interesting how I got this Black Chronicle. I had saw a what they call a newsletter that he had out quite some time ago. And I called him for about 6 years, relentlessly calling him, trying to get the information. And after the 6th year, I gave up. I said, after $3,000 phone bill and 6 years later, I said, well, I'm going to give up on this. One day on the 7th year, I called the heaven year. I called divine intervention, because I came in the house from work and a voice said, call Henry. And I called him up and he answered. And he sent me all the information. And I did all the due diligence. And 30 days later, Henry died. So just think for a minute. If I wouldn't have listened to that voice, and I know who that voice was, the voice of God, I know exactly who it was. And if I wouldn't have listened to that voice, I wouldn't be standing here talking about the Black Chronicle. Well, the Black Chronicle is verification that slavery, out of slavery, there were some bad things, but also there were some good things. We have to look back to that. Just think for a moment, if we had this information. When I was putting this together, I was kind of angry. When you read this Black Chronicle, you either get angry at white folks or you're proud that you're a black man. And I would recommend the latter of the two.
Yes, sir.
Because you can get caught up in hate and you start turning around hating your brother. So we want to move on from hate. We don't want to talk about 200 years of slavery and keep it going. We don't want to forget, but we don't want to keep it going. We want to move on. We want to keep the struggle going. So this 222 years of history. Just think for a moment. When I was in high school in the 60s, we didn't have heroes we could look up to. We only had like two people that they talked about, two black people, and that was Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. So much so that their nose turned long and they actually turned white. And so I was wondering to myself, where was all this history? Where was it at? Why didn't they put it in the history book? Why did they hide it from us? What was going on? Well, just think what it would have done if they would put it in the history book. It would have changed the scope of Americans, certainly black Americans. It would have changed the way we looked at ourselves. It would have changed the way that we looked at our skin, the way we looked at our hair. And as I looked on it, and some of these stories in here are just, just so overwhelming. For example, Crispus Attucks, who was actually, they say he was the first black man killed. In the Black Chronicle, read it. He started the American Revolution. He jousted one of the British and they got it on. And he was the first one killed. Charles Drew, a black doctor, experimenting with blood plasma, started the blood bank, was traveling through North Carolina and had an accident. They took him to an all-white hospital and they refused him his own invention, a blood transfusion. He died. Benjamin Banneker, an architect, he was a surveyor, he was an inventor, invented a all-wooden clock. Wasn't made out of didn't have to use electricity, didn't have to use batteries. Ticked for 50 years, perfect time. He was one of the 3 gentlemen that laid the plans down for the building of Washington, D.C. And one of them lost the plans. He was so intelligent, he had it up in his head, and he reenacted it and put it on paper. And because of him, D.C. stands today. Another black man, Henry Brown, a slave, got inside a box, if you will, or a trunk, lived off of biscuits and water, and he put a stamp on the box and mailed himself out of slavery. And they say black folks are not intelligent. The first university was founded in 1850, Wilberforce University. So we was educated from the very outset. I mean, let's face it here. And it got me to thinking about when I first came to the University of Pittsburgh, 1968. I can remember just like it was yesterday. You'd go in the classroom, you'd look around, you'd maybe see one black over here, maybe one black in the back. And the only time you could relate to them is when you kind of meandered out in the hallway doing a break, and the next time you sat with him. But it was only at that time about 500 to 700 blacks attending here. And so we kind of got together somehow or another. I can remember. We didn't have black studies. There wasn't a black student government. There wasn't nobody that was particularly interested in your scheduling. There wasn't no black counseling. There wasn't many black professors. One that I can remember, and he was my mentor, and I look up to him to this day. And from what I understand, he's still here. Dr. Jack Daniels, a great man. A great man. You can applaud him because he was a great man. And I remember distinctly when he was teaching black rhetoric. And he passed out a book called The Impossible Revolution. And he asked us, he kept us on our toes. He asked us, he said, on a quiz, he said, is this book black in nature? Is it written by a black author? Well, you had to read the back, the front, the inside to know that this man graduated in 1920 from the University of Mississippi. And when we got together, we found out that racism was rampant in this university. Rampant. No black studies, no BAS, no black radio station, nobody working on the radio station. So we got together secretly, 500, 600 of us. And we said, we're tired of the racism at this university. We're tired of not having a say at this university. So we got together and said, we're going to change. We're going to present this administration and the chancellor, who at the time was Wesley Posbar, we're going to present him with some alternatives, some demands. And we listed those demands. We wanted to change how the students black students were looked at, and how the curriculum was looked at, and how you got in. Because when you came to this university in '68, you either had to be qualified or you had to know somebody powerful to get in. I mean, real qualified. And we said we're tired of going to a class and not hearing about ourselves and not having a say. So we got together and said we're gonna put some demands on this university. And the great thing about it is, before we went to the black community in the Hill and all over, and they embraced us with our struggle. And I can remember, just like it was yesterday, walking from this building over to the church. And I'm not talking particularly about just white folks, but they was running like it was a civil war. And I remember when we went through the doors and we were getting ready to approach the chancellor's office, the police came and said, stop, you can't go no further. We said, well, we want to see the chancellor. We want demands put on this chancellor. So he came out, and like he always did, he hemmed hard. He said, we'll get back to you. Well, that wasn't good enough. We wasn't buying that. We had an alternative. We came back and met again. We said, he's not going to meet our demands. And when we got to work, he said he couldn't meet all our demands. We didn't accept it. We said, no, 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 no. We had another alternative. Somebody said, well, let's take the bill, let's burn like we did in our community. I said, oh, that's not going to work. Oh, no, 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 no. Somebody said, maybe we'll just go and take the whole university over us. And we said, no, 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 no. And somebody said, what about taking over the computer center? But you had to be careful. You got to remember that you take over the computer center, everything is centered on the computer center. And it had everything, records, bills, your tuition, everything. So we had to consult a lawyer. And some of the people like Dr. Jack Daniels, Lloyd Bell, Dr. Curtis Porter, Luddy Hayden, just to name a few. I'm just going, there's a whole lot more. But for these people, Dr. Bell, even Dr. Norman Johnson came from CMU and came down in our fight. And they put their jobs on the line for us so that we didn't ask to be special. We asked to be equal. We wanted the same equality because we paid money. Some mothers and fathers was taking out loans that they're still paying on for their children. And all we wanted was a chance to be equal like everybody else. And so what happened? We went over there and they turned down. So we went, and that was a hard decision to make, to take over the computer center, because we're looking at jail time maybe. And some people said, well, and we understood it, said, well, we can't do that. If you go there, we have to bow out. Once again, people like Saul Dean and Harvey Adams and Nate Smith, they joined in the fight. And I remember another gentleman, I call him a gentleman, but a lot of people didn't hear, it was Bowie Hayden. And Bowie Hayden didn't bite the tongue. Bowie Hayden, when he came in, he scared a lot of folks. He scared me. and when we took over, I'll never forget, he was walking, and we had, at the time, we had afros and dashikis and tikis, and we had the conga drums and the marimbas, and we were singing African songs, and we wasn't singing Risho Bakar, we were singing African songs and talking Swahili. And we were going across to the university to go to the computer center, and I remember when we got there, the girl said, oh my God, black folks, they're coming, oh my God. And they were scared and so forth, and we sat in there, and we said, we're not going to move until he meets our demands. And we demanded that he go on record saying he would meet the demands. And he met the demands. Out of that came Black Studies, the BAS. Out of that came a curriculum, the Black Studies program. They hired more black teachers, more black professors. There was people on student government, but the fight wasn't over. I remember distinctly, I was standing right down in the student union right here, and I said to myself, and I heard a young boy on the radio saying, WPGH wants you. And I said, oh, a radio station. So I went upstairs to apply. And they gave us the BAS offices on, I'll never forget, it was one office and two big suites like. And I remember we painted it black. The whole entire office black. And we had Huey P. Newton. He was sitting in a wicker chair and a big picture of him on the wall. And you couldn't go down the other side of the fourth floor because that was a radio station. It had unauthorized. If you wasn't authorized, you couldn't go down there. So I was down there applying for a job, and he thought maybe I was lost. And he said to me, you're looking for the BAS? I said, no. I know where it is. It's right down the hall, 420. I said, I came here to apply for a disc jockey, a work-study job. He said, well, you have to fill out an application, and you have to fill out this roster. I said, let me see this roster. The roster had about 25 pages and about 250 names on it. I looked and I said, well, where do you want me to put my name? He said, down at the bottom. I said, do you realize I have a PhD before you called me? He said, well, I have to be fair. I said, fair? I said, I'm not signing the roster, and I'm not filling out the application, but I'll be back. Went right down to the BAS and talked to Curtis, Luddy, and I talked to, I think, Gail Austin, and a few Henry Gaskins was there, and a couple other people, Wade Lawson, Joe McCormick, who ended up being the BAS chairman. And I said, we have to do exactly what we did at Computer Center. We got to go and shut it down. Shut it down. And once again, we went out on our quest. The struggle was ongoing. Stopped by and picked up the community. And the community embraced us. So I'll never forget. And we went about, it was about 6 or 7 o'clock. And the same white boy that told me to fill out the application, I was staring him in the face. And when I went in there, there was somebody on there talking about WPGH. I said, shut it down. He always, call the police! Call the police! And I said, if you don't shut it down, it was quite a shame because we didn't know how to shut it down. We didn't have an engineer. But I had my hand on these switches, and I said, if you don't shut it down, we're going to pull the plug. And they shut it down. They shut it down. And I'll never forget, the chancellor came, and he was so short, little redhead man, came, stood on a chair. The media, the press, the Post-Gazette, the Courier, Channel 4, Channel 11, Channel 2, KDK, all of them came. And they wanted to know what was going on. We said we shut the radio stations off the air. We demand that we be represented. And so, guess what? What happened? He came out and said, I want to meet with Ben Wilson, Luddy Hayden. I want to meet with Joe McCormick. The next day, we met. He didn't come. He sent his vice chancellor, Bernie Kabowski. And he met with us, and I said, and the same white boy that was the general manager, I was facing him. I wasn't asking for a job. I was telling him, I'm taking over. He said, what do you want? I said, I want Friday, all day, all night, Saturday, all day, all night, Sunday, all day, all night, and Monday. And they said, that's too many. I said, you had it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, for all that time. We deserve it. We're taking it. We want a budget. We want a secretary. We want work study. We want office. And we want the full run. So we took over the radio station. And I renamed it the Black Side of WPGH. The Black Side. And the reason why I named it like that is because if you kept it the same, black folks wouldn't even know you existed. We got programs. We went on, and on Sunday mornings we had a gospel show. We did a lot of things. And the thing that was so important to us was we was able to communicate. We was able to let you know. And it's important to be able to communicate. And so I was kind of taken back. I came back here about 4 days ago. I went back up to the radio station. And I looked, and they changed the station. It's no longer WPGH. And it's no longer black folks working. And look like, to me, we're going backwards instead of forward. We need to reassess where we're at in 2001. Maybe we need to take another look at that radio station. That's communication. Maybe we need to take a look and not take for granted this educational system, because there's a legacy being left here. A lot of people put a lot of hard work so that we can be here today getting an education. The 3M program, the USEP program, a lot of people couldn't get in if it wasn't for that program, went on to become great men, great women, vice presidents, presidents, and of corporations. Quite a few people, lawyers, I can remember. So out of that came something great. The struggle is ongoing. We need to keep the struggle going. We cannot take for granted, or we'll be back like another 1968. I'm gonna leave you with this one thought, and I gotta go. I'm gonna leave you with one thing. My father told me. He said, you show a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Thank you.
Tonight we have all reported to class, anticipating yet another lecture. And for some reason, not a single one of us would rather be anywhere else, save where we are this very moment. This reason, this desire, is fueled by none other than the pioneer of Afrocentric psychology himself. Please welcome Dr. Akbar.
That's a real wonderful welcome to be back in Pittsburgh. I thought that I may have worn out my welcome by now. I've been here so many times. But I look forward to coming back here. This is a place where many of my very, very good friends stay, and I feel a real kind of relationship and camaraderie with Pitt. Every generation of students, not the administration, but those people who do our thing here, each generation has seen fit to somehow bring me here, and so I guess this must be my fourth or fifth time over the last 20-some years here at the University of Pittsburgh. It's very good to hear Brother Wilson reflect on how lots of these things got established. Very often when we show up after the fact, we kind of take it for granted. So we assume that Black Studies and Black Action Society and Black cultural centers and organizations, we assumed that those things were just there because someone had a good change of heart and said, oh, we really want some darker things here. And sort of voluntarily put into place some of those things that came into existence. What we need to remember is that everything we have achieved on this campus and in this country has been by protest and struggle. Don't take one privilege for granted. I mean, people often ask the question, well, why do you need Black History Month? And why do you need a Black Cultural Center? And why do you have a special time set aside for this? Why do you do that? Aren't you just an American? We're all Americans. There's no White History Month. There is no White Student Union. Why do you need those kinds of things? Fool, shut up. What you don't understand is that everything we have attained by struggle. Right. And the opposition has always been present. Believe it or not, no one has apologized to us yet for 300 years of slavery. No one has paid the deficit yet. In fact, no one has even acknowledged what was done in terms of the hypocrisy of declaring that this is a nation created for all people while systematically defining us as being non-people. And well, they don't do that now. The only reason they don't do it now is because we haven't gone to sleep. So as long as we are vigilant, awake, and concerned about our own development, then we will be able to maintain what we have. But trust me, my friends, my brothers and sisters, if you ever decide that you are an American and think that America loves you, if you ever decide that the Republicans are on your side, or the Democrats are on your side, or the independents are on your side, then that's when we will be headed back to the plantations. So we encourage you to don't forget for one single minute while taking full advantage of what's here. So if you don't support the Black Action Society, in a few years there will be no Black Action Society. If you don't support African American Studies on this campus, there will be no African American Studies on this campus. So it all depends on you in the process. Now, what I want to talk about today is is the whole issue of restoring black power. Restoring black power. Now, when I talk about black power, I don't necessarily mean the way it was manifested 30 years ago with the work of Kwame Ture, Ben Paul, Stokely Carmichael, and the kind of street demonstrations of that time. I believe that it's important to understand that what worked at that time was good for that time. But the critical piece is the consciousness that brought that behavior into existence. The fact that we as a community had to begin to think of ourselves in such a way that we could challenge the barriers to our own enhancement, our own growth, our own advancement. We had to change the way that we thought about us so that we could challenge the forces that were opposing us. Now, those forces have shifted in their manifestation. They don't look like they used to look. There are no for colored white only signs now. You can travel from Miami up to Maine and stay in hotels and eat McDonald's hamburgers and do all those other, you can even go to the bathroom where white people go to the bathroom. You can do all those things that were in a different manifestation. You can vote, even though they can discard the vote when they decide to do so. But you can do those things now. But what is necessary is that we must understand that the Black Power movement, not only here at Pitt, but in this country, the abolition movement, the protest for civil rights movement, grew out of a change in our consciousness. That's the critical piece because, see, America has never had a good feeling about us. That's right. I mean, like, for the first 300 years, we were simply the property of America. There is no mention of us in the Constitution until an amendment, long after America was established as America. So we are not a part of the indigenous definition of what this country is. But what we have taken in this country has been taken. Now, what I want to suggest to you is that it requires a mindset coming from us to ensure our continued development as a community. A mindset rooted in a recognition of who we are and respecting who we are and operating for our self-enhancement as other people do. We don't call for a claim of black superiority. We don't claim a desire to reverse the tables, reverse the process. We don't want to get nobody. That's not our agenda. We come with an African consciousness that does not require us to oppress other people in order to affirm ourselves. We don't come with a call for a black racism. We simply come with a call for humanism rooted in a consciousness of our desire to be who we are in spite of any forces against us. Now, this is something that we must engage in as a self-affirmative kind of activity. In other words, Bush can't give it to us. That's right. Clinton couldn't give it to us. Right. The Pope can't give it to us. America can't give it to us. The school board in Pittsburgh can't give it to us. We must decide what we want and take it in accord with our need to define and affirm ourselves. Now, this generation of African American young people, those who are coming out of high school, those who are in the universities, those who are in graduate school, those who are young professionals, you are our best. You're the best that we have produced in this country. You are more free of external obstacles than any African people have ever been in this country. You can do things that people only dreamed about. The only barrier to your and our success as a community, the only barrier is your own consciousness about who you are. you that racism has gone anywhere. I don't suggest to you for a minute that oppression is no longer here. I don't suggest to you that there is no new world order being implemented. But I submit to you that it is impotent unless you bow down and let it sit on your back. I submit to you that all of those forces are powerless now. And if we will stand up as a community of human beings and operate in our own self-interest, then there is nothing that Bush or Bush's mama or Bush's daughter or Bush's grandchildren can do to stop us. We are the problem now. We are the problem because we are not willing to understand, first of all, there is a race problem in this country, always has been, always will be. White people don't have the key to your salvation. You've got the key to your own salvation, and we've got to stop reacting to other people's agenda and create our own agenda. Right. This is the restoration of black power. You are our best minds, and there is a recognition among the thinkers of the European American world that you have such potential that you could begin to usurp and drain away some of their hegemony and the control of power and resources that they have. They understand the tremendous talent that you have. They understand the tremendous understanding that you have. They know that we know them, and we know them better than they know us. And the only thing that they can continue to do is to convince us to not know ourselves and spend all of our time trying to be like them rather than like ourselves. And in doing so, you then remain distracted, trying to get you some new gold for your teeth, trying to take off more clothes, trying to think that Puff Daddy is the future of black America. To begin to feel that somehow your affirmation of yourself requires you to give up yourself. That somehow to begin to wonder whether what you understand, what our scholars understand, is legitimate or not. And in doing that, we begin to run away from ourselves. So that's why you can get bigger and better blunts than you ever got before. Trust me. Look here. You don't import the dope. Somebody's importing it for you. Now, no one is making you smoke it, but they got the best dope they ever had because it helps to keep you crazy. You see, it's not a joke or accidental that the only black entertainment television is one that shows you showing your behind, blowing each other away every day. Not accidental that the music and the entertainment ideas that have been pushed to the forefront are ones that encourage you to back up that thing, or blow that thing away, or to call sisters the B word, or to think of brothers as perpetual Cisco studs with abs looking like lights coming in and out of them. And somehow, this is not accidental. It is not accidental that this becomes the emphasis of a society because they're trying to keep you away from knowing yourself. It is not accidental that somehow all kinds of images of beauty and sexual gratification are thrown out there as a preoccupation. It isn't accidental that Comic View tells the same dirty jokes every day. Most folks have been able to memorize them, and that becomes where the attention of our best minds go all the time. I mean, we've got to be honest about this stuff. We've got to understand that what happens on ABC, CBS, and all the rest of it is not nearly as destructive as what happens on BET, because you don't watch ABC, you watch BET. And the idea is this helping you gain access to your power? Is this the thing that is helping to activate and maintain the spirit that brought 1 million men to Washington, D.C. back in 1995 and started a whole new concept and definition of what manhood means in America? Is this the power that somehow has been able to preserve our entrance into world power that we somehow continuously fight against? No, these are the things that are at war to get your mind. Now, we must be very careful to understand that it's no one necessarily sitting around a table planning this. We've been kind of pre-programmed to self-destruct. And in that pre-programming, by thinking we free, we can do our own thing, I do my thing, you do your thing, I ain't got no thing but you, black folks are not homogeneous or monolithic, I got my perception, you got your perception, I can be a part of this particular philosophical understanding of that without somehow having to violate what my individuality is. You ain't got to go there. A part of the manipulation is to convince you that you are where you are by yourself. That's right. Please understand, we are dependent upon each other and dependent upon a common history that brought us here. Do you think you are a pit because the people of Pennsylvania kind of like you? Do you think that the Board of Regents, the Board of Trustees 30 years ago decided to go into private session and say, we really need to have more diversity. We really need to have a few more Negroes to bring some type of stamina to the environment. That's not why you are here. You are here because of what Brother Wilson said. Because of black folks who challenged a status quo that was just as happy not to have you here and would have still not had you here had it not been challenged. Now, that consciousness has been lost in this consciousness of individuality. Well, my SAT scores were much higher than the 90th percentile, and I'm really quite here. And all the way through high school, I had a GPA that was very close to a 4 point. And of course, I went to a private school in the suburbs of certain kinds of cities, and that's really why I'm here. And it has nothing to do with any kind of black student union protest. So I'll go join Delta to Delta or some other kind of fraternity. And the idea is that as long as you forget what got you here, then you will begin to destroy and fall apart the institutions that keep you here. Now, how do you do this? What is the strategy? How do we protect our minds? How do we help you protect your minds so that this path that has come through struggle can continue to grow? You see, the struggle is not over. We still like resources to ensure the future of our children. We still don't have a means of controlling the education of our young people so they can understand their greatness and their possibilities. We still don't have institutions so that we can put ourselves to work. We still don't have ways to care for our best and our greatest and to make sure that they are protected and provided for in order that they can continue to produce on our behalf. I'm still absolutely terrified by the ideas that our greatest minds in this this past decade, John G. Jackson, John Henry Clark, Chancellor Williams, some of the most brilliant minds that ever hit this planet, died almost penniless. Died almost penniless. Because we drained their energies as long as they were able to somehow find meager resources, and when they became too old to do that, there was none of us around to make sure their lives could continue. We don't value our best. Right. And we don't have institutions to ensure where our ideas can take place. It's unfortunate that even today, as I stand here as an African-centered psychologist who has really committed his entire career to somehow trying to transform psychology so that it comes out of a Eurocentric mode of describing the psychological functioning and dynamics of European American people, focusing on those things that ensure their continued power and capability, whether it's the libido, the id, the ego, and all those other kinds of things, of understanding their understanding of themselves as being the way to maintain their power, or shall we begin to try to identify a psychology in us that has ensured our survival over circumstances we were never supposed to live through? And we somehow have committed to that, but there's not one institution in the world where I can go and be supported as an African-centered psychologist who wants to understand how we function, why we function, and where we go. Where is our homeland? We have no intellectual homeland. We have no economic homeland. We have no homeland at all. Everything we do is on borrowed ground. After all these years, time is out. Time is out for borrowed ground. So any day that Florida State University decides that somehow they don't want me there anymore, I'm gone. I'm there by their permission. white folks decided that we don't want that man to come in talking that stuff no more. Pitt is a wonderful environment of diversity and diverse opinion, but we don't have any kind of animosity in anyone beginning to bring those kinds of ideas to create divisiveness on this campus. We don't want him here anymore. So BAS, don't you bring his BAS here anymore. And basically, there's nothing they could do. Probably the only reason I can come now is that they don't know what I'm going to talk about. Except for the intelligence agency who always knows what I'm going to talk about. But that's another story. But the idea is that we understand that we are dependent on other people's resources. I can't walk up here. I got to ride up here. And I ain't going to ride in no car that's going to fall apart on the road. That's right. So I need to get here with the most intelligent resources. But we don't have resources to go to. HBCUs all over this country, we don't run one of them. Not one of the HBCUs in this country do we run. And since we don't run them, we can't dictate what's going to happen there. So there is no PhD in African American Studies on any HBCU campus. Not one. There's African Studies down at Howard, but African American Studies does not exist. In fact, the only PhD program in African American Studies was at Temple University that somehow got shifted when they got frightened of an Afrocentric emphasis coming from Alavi Asante, and so they shifted him out and shifted someone else in, and now it's not even there anymore. So why doesn't Atlanta University have it? Why doesn't Howard have it? Why don't even some of the undergraduate schools begin to provide graduate training or undergraduate training in it? They can't do it because they have to go to the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the federal government to get whatever they have. And we sit around arrogantly talking about, I'm at my university. You ain't got no damn university. So, please hear me well. I may sound like I'm angry at you, but I'm not. My intention is for us to wake up and understand that we must save ourselves. My demand is very simple compared to other people. People are preparing for war to protect their identity. What is this whole protest in Israel and between Israel and the Middle East and Palestine? That is a protest of people who see the definition of themselves as a matter of life and death. People your age are preparing to go to war